Hey guys, thanks for checking out another video. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being patient with me. I know I didn't put up a video on Friday and I do apologize. However, I've been trying to get my business going back up and organized. I haven't been feeling that great. And sometimes I'm not feeling super motivated. And since I don't do this for a living, I can miss an upload here or there. I mean, if you want to get more direct input, dog bit me like 7 months ago and that's still there. Anyways, if you want more direct input, don't forget to get subscribed and join the channel, all that good stuff. If you're directly paying me to do things, you can tell me what to do and where to go. How about that? Anyways, today we are back into doing some tabletop looks and reviews and look back at things. And what we have here is not a Polymer 80. No, this is a Gen 2 Glock 40 cal. So this is a Glock 22. Yes, it's a 40 cal. It's a customer's gun. It doesn't eject right. We'll talk about what those reasons are as we get later in the video. But before we do that, I want to talk about the 40 Smith & Wesson cartridge. Now, a lot of people malign it because honestly, nobody's ever given me a really good reason for it. But this is a 9mm. This is new ZQI stuff. It's a steel case, but it's got a high polish, and it seems to work fine. It shoots a little dirty, but it works. This is a 40 Smith & Wesson. And this is a 45 ACP. This is one of my self-defense rounds, so that's why it looks fancy. But as you can see, 40 cal has a longer case than a 9mm, even though it's about the same diameter. A little bit bigger. In fact, you can actually convert a lot of 40 cals to shoot 9mm or vice versa because they're close enough in terms of dimensions. The 40 cal is basically a cut down 10mm because the FBI decided 10mm was too big, so they went with the 40 cal. Well, that's fine and all that, but over time, people have said, oh, it's got too much bite for what it does. A 9mm does everything a 40 cal does, and a 45 is, it's a lot bigger, so there's no real comparison there. I don't know how much I agree to that. I've only owned one 40 cal gun, and that was a Glock 27 small frame. I believe that's what it was, the 27. Correct me down in the comments. It was like one of my first guns, and I got rid of it right away because I really didn't like the way a small frame gun shoots. I'm a full-size guy myself. But anyways, some people actually love them. And in fact, the person that owns this thing bought this one because it's a really nice example of a Gen 2 Glock 22. Polymer 80 kind of mimics their look to imitate like the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 guns, and you can see why. They actually have a nice look to them. They have no finger grooves. It's got a nice undercut up here, nice differentiated stippling that goes higher. There's no thumb groove or anything like that, but overall, I really like the way this grip feels. For those of you that aren't familiar, the Gen 2s came out in 1988 with several revisions that were done to them to make them slightly better and more reliable. One of the biggest things they did was in 1991, they actually went to a single-piece recoil spring. Gen 2 was the first time you could get a one-piece recoil spring, and that was pretty impressive. Now, this one has a fully adjustable rear sight, and I was impressed when I saw that because I didn't know they did that back then, but this could also be a later upgrade, but it's still a U-notch white dot front, but having that much more adjustability is nice. Now, it is a plastic sight. Take that or leave that, but that is an improvement in my opinion. Also, the Gen 2 came about because it was required to have your, I almost said VIN plate, but your serial number had to be melted or embedded into the frame. That was the other thing that Gen 2s were saddled with. You can also see this one does not have any sort of pick rail, although it does have a nice checkered from the factory front of the trigger guard. So overall, it's got a lot of nice features on it. You wouldn't know when looking like there. You'd be like, oh, that could be anything from a Gen 1 to a Gen 4. And you'd be basically correct because otherwise it's basically the same. The mag release on the Gen 2, without a thumb relief or cutout, it's pretty flat to it, but it seems to be pretty easy to hit. And the magazines are just like the newer ones. These ones had the changed up base plates that retain a little bit better. But as you can see, it's a fully drop-free magazine and fully interchangeable with 40 cal mags today. I'm not even sure if this is actually a Gen 2 mag or not because they look the same all the way through. Has the exact same trigger, So you have your trigger safety, no external manual safeties on this of any kind. So unless you're actually depressing the trigger blade, this gun cannot fire. Just show you it is clear before we do it. Wow, that's nice. Trigger feel is actually pretty reasonable. It feels pretty much like all of them up to the Gen 5 in my opinion. Has your take up. And then you just kind of finish pulling all the way through. I'm not a fan of having the trigger blade right there. It's kind of annoying to me. So we'll have to see if he wants to upgrade that. I'd suggest upgrading that trigger to him, because that's just annoying. You can get a wider trigger with a wider trigger safety, like from Steel City Arsenal or an Apex trigger, and eliminate a lot of that. This one is still in very good condition, very smooth. It's had a lot of rounds through it based on when I took it apart, but we'll talk about that in a second. You can see that it's cut here in the front of the frame here, in case you need to strip out your mags. Some people like that, some people don't. It's a full-size gun, so it's not like I can't get my whole hand on there. If it was a small frame with that cut, sometimes I can interfere with your pinky finger, but if you needed to strip, they have them there. Some of the guns have them on the side, and I believe Gen 5 eliminated them, didn't they? Let me know down in the comments. And you have your hole back here. A lot of people will get a fill-in plate for that just because. Now, you can't add back straps or anything like that, but you can always put a set of hoe grips on there, because even though this is a stippling, it's a very smooth stippling. You can see how easy it is to let that go. The sight picture with this adjustable sight actually is pretty easy to pick up for me. Still not my favorite, but it's a much better sight picture than a stock single blade rear sight. Reset on this one is a little weird. If anybody else has a Gen 2, let me know if you have that same problem where it won't go back in a battery if you're manually racking it. But if you go fast, it seems to work fine. But yeah, that could be a problem with the striker spring or even the recoil spring in this one. But that's not the problem this gun has. This gun actually doesn't eject or extract when it's being fired. I can manually extract. Like if I'm cycling the slide, I can get each round to come out. And see, it doesn't do it unless you have the trigger depressed, so I'm pretty sure that's a striker spring issue. But the extractor, I think, is worn down from years of use. Let's go ahead and pop it apart. It comes apart just like any other Glock. First thing you do is make sure it's clear. Yep. Then you do that. And your whole front comes off. Looking at the frame, it looks pretty much identical to all the Gen 3, Gen 4s, and Gen 1 stuff. You have your firing pin block right there, excuse me. I don't know what I was pointing to back there. And then looking at the slide, you can see, like I said, this one has the captive recoil spring. Not 100% sure if this is the original spring or not. That could be a problem. And then taking out the barrel, you can see the barrel is in very nice shape. I re-oiled it after I took it apart. Minimal wear in here, but you can see this thing has had a lot of roundage through it. Hopefully, yeah, there you go. Don't focus on that, focus on this. Yeah, you can see from the years of cycling, it's actually taken down the finish inside, but not in any detrimental way. It's just kind of smoothed it out a little bit. And that happens from right here. You can see on the front of the lockup right there that it's kind of worn down the finish. But based on the brass shavings I pulled out of the drop safety or firing pin block hole, this thing has had a lot of rounds, and that could potentially have been causing an issue with it extracting as well. That's something a lot of guys don't think about when they clean their Glocks, is this drop safety, when it pushes up, it allows a firing pin to go home, but there's also a spring in here that's going in this way that is keeping the ejection or the extractor pushed out a little bit, so that when it comes out, it can go around the rim without crushing or tearing the end of the rim. And that can build up with brass, because that hole right there is clear through to that hole, and all of this is all connected. So all I did was I took the extractor out. It's super easy. You just got to take the rear plate off, take the striker out, get in there with a Q-tip, a long Q-tip, and I was pulling out probably 3 or 4 different times visible brass shavings. Let's just say if this was a transmission, it wouldn't be any good anymore. But I have to take it to the range. I'm actually going to put a brand new extractor in it anyway. We had to order one during the pandemic. Glock was like holding on to all their spare parts. So even though we had a large backstock because we are Glock armorers, they weren't sending us any parts for a long time because they needed them for the guns they were building, which I kind of understand. But reassembly, as you can see, is Glock simple. So yeah, that's a Gen 2, which is pretty much like every Glock since and before because it's a Glock. What does that mean for you as a potential buyer? That means if you prefer a gun with no finger grooves, look for a 2 or a 5. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe a 3. No, 3s have finger grooves. And then, yeah, just if you can find one of these are going to get more collectible and more rare. Original first-gen guns, even a 40 cal, have gone up in price drastically, and the Gen 2s are starting to get harder and harder to find. Again, it's a 30-year-old gun. This one, I'm not 100% sure of its age. If it's the original spring, it's after 1991. If it's a replacement spring, it could be anywhere from 88 to 96, I think it is. So, yeah, keep your eyes open. If you can get an original, do it. If you remember, Glock came out with their Gen 1 clone or Gen 1 reissue, and it was pretty cool, but it was like $700 for just a Glock, and it didn't make a lot of sense. So, yeah, if you like that video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I know that was a little bit laid back, but again, I'm getting back into it, and I have to go to the range. I do apologize, but I've been waiting. My Taurus has been at the store in Harrisonburg, and I've been waiting for that to come back. And additionally, I'm looking at trading one gun for another gun, and I'm trying to work out all those before I go to the range. So I'll get to it, I promise. Come back for that when it does happen. I'll try to get that done by the end of the week. I'm also picking up a new camera, so we'll see what the videos look like. So come back for all that. Let me know what you guys think. And, as always, I'll talk to you later.